Spoiler alert, and also a warning alert. I did get a comment last time after the October talk that I did. A gentleman felt as though he couldn't actually stay listening to the webinar because he'd already decided he couldn't take or leave alcohol, he couldn't moderate it, and he definitely knew he absolutely needed to not drink ever again. So listening to somebody like myself speak about how I luckily am able to be a moderate drinker wasn't helpful for that gentleman, and it might not be helpful for other people who have reached a similar conclusion already. Moderation and months off and periods of being alcohol free is often part of somebody's journey to being completely alcohol free for life, and if you've reached that point in life, this webinar might not be the most interesting or helpful thing for you to listen to. But on that note, this is for people who have taken a month off, probably in January 2017, but ever, and are looking at what to do next. So do feel free to type a few questions in if you have any, but and also let me know if there's any problems with the sound. I dropped off about 4 times in October, so sorry about that. And meanwhile, I'm going to just start rambling on. But first of all, I'm going to read a quote, because I've been, people who know me will know that the kind of therapy that I mostly practice is called rational emotive behaviour therapy. It's also the founding therapy of smart recovery. It was the original cognitive behavioural therapy, and it's something I use a lot in my practice. A big part of rational emotive behaviour therapy is about learning to be able to tolerate discomfort and frustration better, because all the while we demand to be not frustrated, and all the while we demand to feel comfortable, we will probably not make progress on many of our important goals, or live up to all of our values, because often that involves a rockier road, more discomfort, more frustration. But I've also been reading about other forms of therapy, and this is a form of therapy called Morita, M-O-R-I-T-A therapy. It originated a long time ago in the early 20th century, Japanese gentleman. But this is the quote, and I've been using this to inspire me, because I'm actually on dry 90 days, so January is the first third of that. This is the quote: "If your mood is cloudy, don't worry, it will clear up. If it is sunny, don't rejoice, it will become cloudy again. Whether it is cloudy or sunny, be disappointed only when you don't work. If you accomplish your task, be satisfied whether your mood is cloudy or clear. Don't base your life on uncertain, uncontrollable moods. Behaviour is certain and controllable." Now, that might be controversial to some people. Our moods are important and can affect our enjoyment of life. But what I took from that quote is that my moods are always going to be in flux. In a really, really bad day, there are going to be periods of that day that aren't as bad as others, and there may even be some nuggets of goodness in the day. And in a brilliant day, there might still be things that annoy and frustrate me. And from second to second, my mood's going to be fluctuating and in flux. I'm going to feel better about how this webinar's going in 10 minutes time maybe than I was at the very beginning. So what that quote has helped me learn, or how inspired me to remember, is that if I always focus on how I'm feeling, I'm probably not going to get on with the job in hand, or at hand, whatever that job is. Writing, doing my 10,000 steps a day, which I've done every day since the beginning of January, not drinking for a period of time, any other tasks that I set myself. So just doing the things I intend to do, however I feel, and without paying too much attention to how I feel, enables me to still feel more satisfied at the end of the day, because I've done what I set out to do, and I didn't let how I was feeling interrupt my plans. Sounds very simplistic, and people with enduring mental health difficulties will not necessarily be able to embrace that philosophy as much as someone like myself, who has ups and downs, but I certainly don't suffer from a clinical mental health disorder or difficulty. I'm doing dry 90. As most people who already know me on here know, I don't drink every day, and I consider myself a moderate drinker. I had a huge blip when my mother passed away, where I suddenly started drinking daily. I never had up to that point in time. I was more a cup of tea and a cigarette person. And a cup of tea and a cigarette could have kept me going night after night after night. But when my mother passed away, I started drinking every night, and I started drinking by myself. I'm quite an introvert anyway. If I would drink socially, it's more because I find being out and about quite overstimulating. So drinking almost helps me cope with the overstimulation. But when my mother passed away, I drank every night, about the same bottle of wine every night, Monday to Sunday, from about 8 p.m, never more, never less. But it was obviously far too much, and wasn't good for me. I ballooned in weight, and my skin and hair and, you know, various markers of health and vitality were diminished, and I probably drank like that for close to 2 years, something like that. Meanwhile, I did give up smoking, and I was on 40 a day. I don't know why or how I managed to give up smoking just after my mother passed away, but did start drinking. Delighted that I gave up smoking, and thrilled that I managed it. I was the heaviest smoker in my set, and nobody ever thought I'd stop, and I did. So I did have to spend quite a lot of time retraining myself to sit with uncomfortable, unpleasant emotions, and experience them maybe more fully and therefore more distressingly, because I was trying not to drink on those feelings. A big part of the solution for me was personal therapy or grief counselling, or whatever other people call it. Sometimes working with a professional can help us sit with, identify and process some of our uncomfortable feelings without using substances or other behaviours to kind of manage our feelings. But I'm doing dry 90 because I know damn well if I could not drink for one night, I could not drink any night ever again, because I'm not physically dependent on alcohol. So I can make the effort it takes to not drink on one night repeatedly, as long as I want to. That's the way I feel about it. I know other people feel they have no control over the decision to drink. They're almost consuming it before they've even thought twice. But many people who've been able to do a dry January, which probably most people here have done, or with a few blips have managed it, will have discovered that it may take Herculean effort, but they are able to not drink for several nights in a row. And the fortunate but maybe unwanted news is that if you can do that, then you can do it for as long as you want to. It's just a question again of how much discomfort and effort and frustration we want to experience in our life, or demand that we shouldn't experience. And if we are comfortable, well, if you like, comfortable with feeling a bit more uncomfortable, and accept that the thing we most want to do is the thing that we've said we're not going to do for a while or ever again, it's easier to accept that decision. All the while we kind of go, oh, how dare life be so frustrating? How dare it not be really, really easy to just not drink? How unfair of life that I'm just not one of those people who can take it or leave it, or doesn't even like the taste of it. But, you know, there's no actual hard and fast rules that say our life must be super comfortable at all points. In fact, if it was, then we probably wouldn't achieve any long-term goals, because we'd be living in the moment all the time. We'd be short-term hedonists. You know, I want to feel comfortable now, so I'll do now what feels most comfortable, and sod the diet, sod the no drinking, or sod the whatever. So something I regularly recommend people look into is rational emotive behaviour therapy, and I think I put links up in October, and if we did, I'm sure we can dig them out again. Smart recovery, whether you're looking to stop or cut down, smart recovery is something that's well worth looking into, because it is a evidence-based alternative to something like AA, which not everyone gets along with, whether they don't get along with the philosophy or the language or whatever about it. Smart recovery is based upon a psychological therapy, so it's evidence-based and it's secular. And you can teach yourself about the principles of it, and you can join online meetings if you want, or you can just work through the materials. But it's certainly worth trying out. Hi, Kath. Hello, Janet, as well. I think, Janet, you were on the October one, so I seem to remember your name. And hi, Kath. Well done for being alcohol-free for 43 days and admitting and recognising that you're still getting urges. You've noticed that quite a lot of your urges are mood-based, and how can I manage my mood better? Well, the quote I gave at the beginning, which is helping me, is almost helping me accept that moods are moods, they're always in flux, but not obsessing about the mood when I'm trying to make decisions about whether to have a drink or not. And I think one of the things that we sometimes need to work out is, are these moods just part and parcel of life, and we're just we haven't become very good at accepting them? Or are they moods to do with things that we could perhaps change? Hi, Anne-Marie. For instance, I'm always going to probably feel stressed at the end of a work day. I work in a drug and alcohol service part-time, and one of the days that I do that work, I do a 9-hour day, and the other day I do a 10-hour day, which begins with one-to-one therapy sessions and ends at 5:30 at night with a controlled drinking group that goes on till 7, and then I'll work for another hour after that. So the chances of me getting home at the end of that day and feeling like, it's not that I feel like negative or in a low mood, but I'm certainly feeling stressed, and I'm feeling also exhausted, and that would be a big risk for me of sort of wanting to buy A, really slutty food, and B, possibly chucking a bottle of wine in the basket at the same time. And again, I'm a moderate drinker, so that, drinking a few glasses of wine in a week isn't actually a problem for me, but it isn't how I would want to be consuming wine if it was one of the days I've chosen to have a drink, just having it almost as a response to stress. So, Kath, I suppose I'm rambling on, but some of your moods may be things you can solve, things that annoy or upset you that you could maybe look at tackling one by one so that they annoy or upset you less. Other things may be inevitable parts of life, in which case accepting that they are there, but not that they have to drive your behaviours and your decisions. And well done, because 43 days alcohol free means you haven't let those moods drive your behaviours and decisions. You've still not drunk, even though I would hypothesise that previously some of those moods were moods you would have drank on, or definitely be more likely to. So I think 43 days is good. And one of the things that comes up for people I often say to my clients, because lots of my clients are kind of obsessed with knowing, am I an alcoholic or not? And I kind of ask them, well, if I said you were, what would that mean? And if I said you weren't, what would that mean about your drinking? And they're kind of confused, but I say, well, there's physical dependency on alcohol, which is a physical, medical difficulty and a problem that has a medical part of the solution. But for anyone else who doesn't have physical dependency and doesn't sweat or shake in the morning unless they drink, etc., then you have a drink problem if drink is causing you problems. And those problems could be like at the lower end of the scale, like they just interfere with your productivity, or you're a bit less present for the kids in the morning, through to quite severe, such that your health is declining, you're missing days at work, you drink driving or whatever. So you have a drink problem if drink is causing you problems, and at that point it's a question of like saying what do you want to do about alcohol, and whether it is in or out of your life, and if it's in, under what conditions. There was a lady earlier on the Club Soda Facebook page who I think had been alcohol free for some time, and she'd gone back to moderating. Don't know if the lady's on here, and it was quite a long post, but it's not far down, and she said you know, how much do I have, when, with who, is 2 glasses too much, is a bottle of wine, what is government guidelines once a week a binge, should I spread it out? And she was saying it's almost like there's so many decisions, it may as well be easier not to drink. And this is something that comes up with my clients a lot, and I encourage them to contemplate, because actually I think it's the same with eating. But when it comes to eating, I think we make, I don't know, I'm guessing, but it's a big number, something like, you know, 783 micro decisions about food every day, from what to eat, when, with who, how much, when to start, when to stop, where to buy it from, what we want, what we should have, what's part of our diet, what's not, and then all those other food-based decisions. So there's numerous decisions, and obviously we can't stop eating. We have withdrawal symptoms to food, and they're called hunger, and then we need food to take our withdrawal symptoms of food away, and we can't starve. So controlled drinking is a bit like food, in the sense that you're going to have to make numerous decisions about alcohol during the week, during each day, possibly for some people, but certainly when you, on the nights you're not drinking, and also on the nights you are drinking, there will be numerous decisions involved. And for some people, the effort involved in those decisions takes away all of the pleasure of the occasional times they do drink. And in some respects, you know, in many respects even, it's easier for the brain to process a yes or no decision. And if that decision is always no, then, you know, that's done. A bit like me with smoking. Do you want a cigarette? No thanks, I don't smoke. You know, do you want a ciggy? No thank you. Do you smoke? No. The answer's always no, and therefore it's almost an easier response, because I don't have to go, oh, do I? Oh, yeah, I could today, but if I do smoke today, do I want this one that they're offering me now, or do I want to wait to have it later? Could I just take the cigarette off them now but then save it for later? And then, then will I just want what? You know, there's too many decisions involved. When it's just a binary yes or no, and you're on no, you're done. So controlled drinking can involve numerous little decisions that can be quite draining and wearing for a person. And some people who have kind of successfully moderated and controlled still say, you know what, I'm just going to not drink because it's still easier. It's just a lot easier. And the answer's always no. I'm always ordering a soft drink. I'm never going to hum and ah about it. Decisions made. And Gary's just agreed with that. Thanks, Gary. It's you know, it's a difficult one, controlling, because you're creating so many possibilities for yourself, and more decision points in your life where you'll be needing to think about what you want to do. One of the answers to that is possibly, you know, really rigorous planning, but then again, people don't always like that. For instance, I will only drink on Friday and Saturday nights. I will never drink in the day, and you know, that's it. But I won't drink by myself, for example. That's quite common kind of rules that people often give me as their kind of ideal scenario. And I say, well, what's your ideal scenario for alcohol in your life? They say, I'll never drink by myself, and I'll only drink on Friday and Saturday nights. Brilliant. But then, what about brunch? What about when suddenly 2 people cancel your Friday night and your Saturday night plan or date, blow out? Do you drink by yourself then because you've been looking forward to a drink, or do you go, well, don't drink by myself, so I'll not be drinking, even though I'd previously said I would, or thought I would be drinking on a Friday night? So again, you know, you can put rules in place, but then you can be thwarted about that, and it's the person's decision, I guess, how strict they are with themselves and how much they trust themselves to be strict. Charlotte also, when we're talking about moods and how you deal with moods, she said you know, it really helps to accept that alcohol doesn't ever help in these situations, and waking up to the illusion that it does is part of the solution. I would totally agree. Alcohol and other substance use and abuse, it's the pause button. It's kind of going, la, 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 I don't want to think about my problems. They're all going away. You know, I'm not opening the bills that are on the mat. You know, I don't want to know what's inside the envelope. And drinking is like putting the pause on, putting the headphones on so we can't hear or pay attention to the things that we don't want to. And when we wake up and the pause button's off, those difficulties were usually still there, on top of which there's new difficulties because we've got a hangover at the very least. We possibly feel guilty, and we possibly have a really bad morning because of the hangover, and then we're on the back foot all day, and then new problems arise, and then that day is actually more stressful than the previous one because we had a hangover during half of it and we felt guilty for most of it. So yeah, there's a vicious circle about drinking, and there's a virtuous circle about stopping, certainly for periods of time. One thing that I've always noticed about when I take extended breaks off alcohol, like I said, I don't drink anywhere near every day or even every week, but when I take extended breaks off, certain things still improve. For instance, I don't know if you can see here, I've got like really bad adult onset acne. I never had problems in as a teenager, in my 20s or 30s, but in my 40s, for some reason I do. It's probably hormonal, but I certainly see improvements in my skin when I have really extended periods off, and I have improvements in my overall sleep. I have quite a bad back, so I kind of toss and turn a lot during the night, but I feel more rested, and the app I use to measure my sleep seems to report that I'm sleeping more solidly, as it were, during these extended periods off. I also do a lot of writing, and I don't get paid for it. It's kind of my perverse hobby, that I write psychological articles for psychological journals or book chapters I've been asked to contribute to and things like that. And I do all that stuff in my spare time, and I get so much more done when I take extended breaks from alcohol. I guess it's because most of the time I'm doing this kind of writing at the weekend, so it's just terrific to be up at 7 at the weekend as well as in the week and really cracking on with some of my kind of personal projects that are important to me, and that also helps me, I think, live my values more, because I'm using more of my skills and interests, so I feel more satisfied and rewarded. I'm just going to show off my glass again, because this is my dry January present to myself, a monogrammed glass from Anthropology. Nobody bought me one for Christmas, so I bought one for myself. And in it is one of my favourite tipples, is the Belvoir Raspberry and Rose Cordial. But I also quite like this new bottle green I've discovered, grapefruit and honeysuckle. And my old friend, no added sugar, fiery ginger beer from Tesco's. I'm not getting any commission for that, by the way. But I do sort of feel more hydrated as well when I take these extended periods off. I'm not a good water drinker anyway, and I do like my coffees, but always good to get more liquid down us. I'm wondering if anyone's got any particular questions about their own onward, what they're thinking of for themselves. Many people at the end of dry January have ideas for themselves about what what their dream relationship with alcohol might be post January, if their idea is they will be drinking again. The first thing I would say is if you're going to lay out some goals along the lines of, I'm only going to drink at the weekends, for example, I'm never going to drink on a school night, then beware that the 1st of February is a school night. 1st of February is, I believe, Wednesday, and many people make and break a rule about drinking immediately, because they celebrate the end of dry January by drinking on the 1st of February, irrespective of if the 1st of February falls within their new rules for drinking. So be honest with yourselves if that's something you're setting for yourself as a sort of your boundaries around alcohol. But like the lady said earlier, a lot of this is about exploding some of the myths, accepting alcohol for what it is, and sort of seeing that the emperor has no clothes, as it were, because it is a social lubricant. It punctuates most any event that adults gather together to do, sports, dinner. You know, there's far more fashion now for eating out, eating in, cooking, entertaining, and even if when people stay at home, alcohol's involved. When they go out, it definitely usually is. Holidays, treats, you know, anniversaries, birthdays, work, wining, dining. It's endless, the opportunities to not be able to have a night off alcohol. So it's about discovering for yourself that it doesn't really do much other than, for people who are shy, give them a little bit of confidence, which it does. You know, there's no point pretending it doesn't do anything, but it does give people who are shy confidence. But it usually tips over into overconfidence or arrogance, or you know, actually being more aggressive in conversation than you thought you were, and forgetting what you spoke to people about anyway. So for a shy person, that actually doesn't help them long term, because they'll probably end up feeling embarrassed anyway about you know, half of the evening. And it's the rest of alcohol usually just means we stay at parties and pubs longer than we would if we were sober, but that actually speaks volumes in itself about how interesting those activities are, generally without alcohol. Oh, Kath's saying she didn't start for dry January and she's thought about moderating, but I know I can't, because that first drink is one too many, and I'm still getting used to that as my future. And for some people, Kath, and like other people I've met on here and at work, one drink is never enough. No, what's the saying? One drink is too much and 1,000 is never enough. That's how some people seem to consume alcohol, almost sort of relentlessly. And for people like that, you know, that one is too dangerous, and it's a type of drink I've come across elsewhere. And I think, Kath, that getting used to that as your future is a nice way of putting it. You're learning to accept the reality, and hopefully in time, and with this lovely community on Club Soda, you're going to discover and learn and have support that that future can be pretty rosy. Actually, there may actually be things that change in it, and there probably need to be. If lots of what we do socially is not fun without a drink, maybe that's because it's not fun, and we need to find other fun things to do, which again can be easier said than done. But it almost helps the scales fall from our eyes, so we can see. Sometimes we can see, if you like, what the ruins are, what needs rebuilding and patching up, but we can also see where the little seeds are that can start germinating and growing. And I think the good thing about stopping drinking for a bit, and possibly then longer term, is that alcohol really interferes with our brain chemistry. It's why people use it to sleep, it's why people use it for confidence, it's why they use it as a pain reliever, it's why they use it to feel up and feel down, because unlike many other substances which have a more specific effect on, let's say, one chemical in the brain, alcohol tends to have an effect on many, which is what makes it quite complicated to treat when it gets into its sort of dependency phase. But it means that whole chemical soup in our brains is just being jumbled up all the time when we drink. So having a long period of time off drink helps that soup to find its sort of equilibrium, as it were. Helps our brain chemistry to get back in balance. For most of the, what I would call, normal population, within 3 months you really do find that sense of balance. And for some people, what they discover is they do have something like an anxiety disorder, or depression, or unresolved grief, or phobias and OCDs and other difficulties. But it's only when we actually stop, interfering with our brain chemistry with mind-altering substances, of which alcohol is one, that we actually discover what's going on. And what's going on is both our strengths and our weaknesses, and it's really important to be able to discover them both. We can build on our strengths, and we can find other ways of supporting ourselves in the areas we're more vulnerable. And Gary's saying here that I guess we're talking about rules for drinking. I've tried every rule I can think of over the last 20 years, and none have worked for long. So again, this is about, that sounds like, Gary, you've been really reflecting on maybe you've been tying yourself in knots with these rules, and I'm wondering if you're contemplating a longer period or a permanent period of being alcohol free. And certainly this is a great community of people. And what I love about Club Soda is it's unique as far as I'm aware, but it's certainly unusual to have a community that welcomes and supports people who are contemplating reducing or temporary abstinence, as well as just the abstinence community or alcohol-free community, because we need to try things out. We're creatures of learning. We need to learn things for ourselves, and I think moderation and temporary abstinence, like a dry month or a dry year, are important parts of our journey, and are important parts of a process of self-discovery, and it's about remaining honest and reflective during that, so we really know how good something's working out for us as a plan or a goal, whether that's moderation. The one day at a time maxim that I think is AA's. I think one day at a time is a good philosophy. You can only control really the day you're in. You can only really control the moment you're in. So obsessing too much about what went before, what's happened already, like rumination, or worrying too much about what's to come, doesn't keep us, focused on what we can do in the here and now. Saying that, I do think we can learn from what went wrong in the past, and we can certainly put plans in place for the future. But I don't see planning as being the same as worrying about the future. I just see it as laying, setting seeds for the future. Telling people in advance that you won't be drinking at their wedding, and that because you're not drinking, you probably won't be there right to the Dexys Midnight Runners at the end, but you'll certainly have a good laugh and maybe gone by 10, and that's planning for a future event. It's not worrying and obsessing about that event. So I think that one day at a time is really good, as long as you consider that you're learning from the past and putting down a few plans for the future. But speaking about the past, I think it's in the post that Claire put together after the October talk I did. But something that people often do when they're trying to change is they discount everything they've done before when they slip up once, and that's really not going to help you. It's not that you should be giving yourself permission to slip up, but if you were putting a cross on a calendar every day for the next year, and you put a cross on every day you didn't drink, and you kept a running total of that, if at the end of 365 days you hadn't drunk for, let's say, 300 of them, I imagine anyone who's considered they've had a problem with alcohol, and usually that means they're drinking very frequently or very heavily often, would possibly be pleased with that sort of statistic. 300 days out of 365 I've been alcohol free this year. And just having one slip, people often discount everything they've done before, and that's not really motivating, and it's not very kind, and it's not very supportive of you to yourself to discount it, because it's getting you closer to where you want to be, and it's showing that 5 times out of 6, or whatever the maths is, you are able to make good decisions for yourself, and that's terrific. So do think about being maybe a little bit kinder to yourselves if you do choose to go alcohol free for longer, but you have some blips. Slip ups happen, and it's how we respond to them that can help us be a bit more resilient and be kinder to ourselves when they happen. But we're not very good at forgiving ourselves. So something to think about is, how would you counsel, or what would you say to a friend who said to you, oh my God, I've effed up. I just gone 100 days without a drink, then I had a drink last night. I hate myself. It's all ruined. I have to start all over again. What's the blooming point? I'll never change, etc. You know, this is how people speak to themselves. So if you had a friend or somebody on the boards here, somebody on the Facebook page saying that about themselves, think about what you would say to them, to keep them motivated and pick themselves up, and try and be kinder to yourself. Easier said than done, I know, but it's something to practice and get better at, because we're normally quite good people when we're talking to others, but we're quite cruel and vicious when we're berating ourselves. Possibly that's to do with perfectionism. We allow other people to have flaws, but we don't think we should have flaws. So then when we do have flaws, we beat ourselves up more for hours. That's rather grandiose of us, though, I think. And I'm guilty as charged of that. I'm a super perfectionist. But I don't judge other people by my own standards of perfection, which I think therefore makes me quite grandiose and is something I work on. So something else to think about anyway. And I'm aware we're just over the halfway mark. Yeah, we're coming up to 22. And I would be interested if anyone's got questions about their ongoing relationship with alcohol, or if we call it that, what people are thinking of doing from 1st of February on. Pop your questions down below, as it were, and otherwise I'll talk a bit about strategies for resisting urges, because I think urges are things that come up a lot, and when I do one-to-one sessions with people, we obviously have a lot more time, and an important thing is to sort of reverse engineer the urge, because sometimes we think the urge comes when we're, let's say, in Sainsbury's picking up some ready meals for dinner or whatever, or even some lovely ingredients to make something from scratch. Not that I'd know about that, but people think, oh, I saw the wine and then I had an urge, and then potentially they bought some and then they had some. But often, if we would kind of work backwards, these urges can actually be started up earlier in the day. Let's say when we're at work, around lunchtime, people actually sometimes are already thinking about the fact that they won't drink later, but maybe start to have a little bit of an internal dialogue about the fact that they won't, and start to feel a bit sort of frustrated and annoyed about that. Sometimes people sort of set up a situation where they're going to have an argument with somebody, or feel stressed, so that they create an excuse for themselves later on to say it's just a really bad day, forget about it, I haven't had a drink for 5 days, I can have one now. So think about when you start trying to coerce yourself into having a drink, because it may not be at the point of giving into the so-called urge when you get it, let's say, in the supermarket, or when you sit down with that friend at dinner, when you'd been intending not to drink, but you think, oh, I don't need to tell them that I'm on dry January. If I never tell them, they'll never know. So I could have a drink with them right now. You know, it may happen earlier in the day. So start to be a little bit more aware of when a niggling thought sets in. Because that's when you could nip it in the bud. That's when you could sort of realise you're a little bit vulnerable that day. So probably what you need to do is phone someone else to pick up some food, so you don't even go to the supermarket, or you just go straight home and make do with something from the cupboard, or your partner brings it home, or what have you, or you get on Club Soda and you tell people how you're feeling. It's about making things easier for ourselves sometimes. I know I'm saying we should try and experience more discomfort and frustration, but there's no need to put ourselves in a hugely challenging situation if we don't need to be in it. We can throw ourselves a bone now and again. Oh yeah, and Julie's saying, you know, hi Helen, the wine doesn't undo the day's events. It sure doesn't. Wine will usually mean we talk about the day's events to our, let's say, dinner companion. We may even just launch into the day's events without so much as a by your leave, and then an hour later we remember to ask them how they are. So yeah, sometimes we're not even the best companion when we're drinking wine after a stressful day, because we're just rambling on about the day to other people, or if we're by ourselves, we're potentially ruminating on the day that's happened. We're sitting there not really focusing on the TV, but just sort of mulling over what went on earlier and making ourselves angrier about it, and rehearsing what we would have said if only we were brave enough, or texting people from work about the day. So actually, it doesn't undo the day's events, and in fact it probably makes us sit with those events even longer, rather than just getting on with our own lives. So again, that's about recognising what alcohol does to us, and I don't think it makes us really good problem solvers. It doesn't always make us excellent companions either. There's something for people who've been doing the month off booze or the sober sprint course. I think one of the day's topics is about sort of alcohol short-sightedness or alcohol myopia, which means that when we are under the influence of drink, we are less able to use our brain to kind of work through long-term consequences of things, and we care less about long-term consequences. So it makes us into even more of a hedonist in the present moment than we are naturally anyway, which is why people get into things like unlicensed taxes, or send their boss a text, or resign from their job, or get in touch with an ex, or order a round of shots for people they don't even know at the bar, or whatever. When people are drunk, they make decisions they would never have made if they were sober, because when they were sober they would be able to contemplate the consequences of those actions, and probably would have decided they weren't worth doing. And that's the other challenge of controlled drinking. Something we mentioned earlier about the on switch and the off switch, and just being off being almost easier and less complicated. The same holds true in my experience. When I work with controlled drinkers or people who want to control their drinking, over and over again people will say the days off are easier than the days I do drink but want to control how much I drink. And again, that's because the days off are just off. No, I'm not drinking. Often that means they're not going out either. They're just staying at home more, or relaxing more, or doing the gym, and not actively going to places that serve alcohol. But on the days they do intend to drink and plan to drink, they then have to exert this control. So they're drinking, but they're trying to control how much they're drinking. And the big problem of that is when you are sober, and your sober plan is to have 3 drinks, it's all very well to have 3, say you're going to have 3 drinks when you're sober, but the problem is you're relying upon your drunk self to stop at 3. So your sober self orders the first drink, you have 1 drink, tiddly. Your tiddly self orders the second drink, and then your slightly more drunken self orders the 3rd drink, and then that is the self that you are leaving to make all of the decisions about the rest of the evening. And if that decision involves stopping at 3 drinks, it's going to be far harder for that goal to be achieved, if that makes sense. Because when you're sober, you typically will be able to make better decisions that are in your best interest longer term, and when you're drunk, you're going to be less able to make those kinds of decisions. So giving your drunk self all of the decisions about moderation is a big ask for your drunk self, because it's really not the right person to give that kind of responsibility to, if that makes sense. Alison's asking that she has the instinct that it's easier to drink less cider than wine. Is this true for others? Maybe because you don't have an open bottle. Certainly when you're looking at moderating, and it's one of the first strategies I teach my clients in the service I work at in a London borough, is looking at changing the drink that you drink. lots of people will be, no, I can only drink this, it's the only thing I like. But the reality is, if we want to make any changes, we need to be a little less comfortable and a little less satisfied all the time. And if that means changing the type of drink we drink, then every little helps, as they say. For instance, some people will drink 3 glasses of wine, or a bottle. A bottle is, let's say, 10 units. The stronger wines are closer to 12, but let's say 10 to do the maths. 3 large glasses of wine is a bottle. By the time you've had 3 large glasses of wine, you've had 10 units. 3 single gin and tonics, a single mind, are 3 units. So without changing the quantity of alcoholic drinks a person is having, 3, they are reducing by 6 or 7 units the quantity of actual alcohol they've consumed, which will also mean they're less inebriated because they've had 3 units of alcohol, not 10. And those 3 have been spread over, the same time frame as 10. So the first unit would have had a chance to wear off. So, this is sort of getting into the nitty-gritty of being a moderate drinker. And for some people, particularly when it comes to things like harm reduction, that's a strategy that some people use. So they say, okay, I'm not going to drink 5 nights of the week, but then on the 2 nights of the week I do drink in the evening, instead of having a bottle of wine, I'm just using that as an example, I'm going to have 3 single measure gin and tonics, and I'm going to get really good quality tonic. I'm going to get some Sipsmiths, and I'm going to put a really nice wedge of lemon in it, and I'm going to get a nice glass or something, and however, or if I'm out, I'm going to have that. And they're not drinking. They're not having less alcoholic drinks and interspersing one alcoholic drink with a soft drink, which is another technique. But what they are doing is changing what they drink, and by that they're actually changing how much alcohol, pure alcohol, they consume. And it's the pure alcohol that the body recognises. How much it costs, and the bottle and the label and the glass is helps us mentally prefer one over the other, but the body just sort of notices the pure alcohol content. So yes, Alison, maybe the process of having a different type of drink that you don't necessarily keep pouring from psychologically helps you drink less of it and drink more moderately. Similarly, changing the size of glasses can help, and things like that. I think if people are looking to moderate, then this is something to contemplate. There's having days off in the week, and maybe having some boundaries around those days and some rules around them. If you've done dry January, damn well you can do it, right? You're just not prepared to make the effort any longer if you're not going to do it going forward. So 4 or 5 days off in a week, and then on the nights you do drink, there are numerous ways of reducing what you drink on those nights. Arrive later, leave earlier, don't go into rounds, change the drink you do drink to something that's a lower strength. Avoid things like shots, avoid things like whatever, all these ways of getting extra drinks in that typically are foisted upon us in when we're in large groups anyway. And that's if you're choosing to drink. I mean, again, you might be choosing to go out and not drink. I think there are people who will have their own thoughts about this, probably because they've tried things already and they've discovered they don't work as well as other strategies do for them. And again, I'd urge you to try things for yourself. Don't take my word for it, and share them on the Club Soda Facebook page, because people have had some great suggestions on there and some great tips for each other when they're trying to moderate, or when they're trying to have extended breaks off. And like I say, this is part of your journey. Discovering what works for you and what doesn't is part of your journey. Practicing self-acceptance and forgiveness when you are fallible, because we're all fallible. We're not perfect. But thinking that we're perfect but everyone else is fallible is silly of us. We're all fallible, and that doesn't make us bad people when we do fail at something. It doesn't make us all bad as a whole person. So learning not to rate yourself and judge yourself based upon some of the things you do is an important part of this journey as well. Because if we're always beating on ourselves, you know, it's going to be much harder to not drink or really cut back on drinking. Oh, thanks, Deneen. Thanks for your comment there. I think also I'm aware that we've got about 10 minutes left, and I don't have to ramble on for another 10 minutes. Of course, I could talk about this till the cows come home. I love helping people with their alcohol issues, because I see how hard people work, and I get a lot of satisfaction from my job seeing how hard people work at change, and being able to support them even a little bit on that journey, I find super satisfying for me as a job. And you know, my mum passed away, not of alcohol related disease, but of a drink and drugs overdose, and she'd been an alcoholic since probably just soon after my birth. And had severe mental health problems the whole time, schizophrenia amongst other things. And I never thought I'd get into this line of work, because I thought, I know, you know, it's too close to home. It's not, you know, I wouldn't be able to have empathy or be congruent and have unconditional positive regard for my clients. But you know what, after a period of grieving and sorting myself out, I actually feel now that that helped me learn more so I can help other people. It's an extra dimension to my knowledge, I suppose, that isn't knowledge you get through training, it's knowledge you get through life, and my own ups and downs. Karen is saying, dry January has made me feel so much better. I don't want to start again, as I will get into bad habits again. Well, Karen, don't have to. You've done it. And like I said at the beginning, if you can do one day, you can do the rest of your life if that's what you choose. It's, you know, this is, you know, a bit blunt of me, but it's a question of deciding, am I prepared to not always be super comfortable? Am I prepared to feel a bit of discomfort sometimes and a bit frustrated sometimes? Can I tolerate that? Am I prepared to live with a life that is sometimes a bit uncomfortable and sometimes a bit frustrating, and not always give in to my immediate desire? Because if you've done dry January, you've shown yourself that you can do that, and not only that, you're actually reaping the rewards. So life isn't more uncomfortable or frustrating for you now. You're feeling better, and you're probably feeling more in control of things, and happy and proud of yourself, which you should be. And this is the time to really question what is it that I think is good about alcohol, if anything, and one by one exploding those myths, because they are all myths. You know, it's an intoxicant, and humans have been fermenting, brewing, licking mushrooms and frogs, you know, since you know, and cactuses or whatever, you know, for thousands of years. So humans have been intoxicating themselves for thousands of years, but as part of ceremonies and rituals, not part of everyday life, not just in the evening when there's nothing good on TV, you know. So there's no real reason for us to be using these substances now as a life, as a kind of part of normal life. That's great, Deneen. 4.5 months. Wow, that's fantastic. That's phenomenal. I'm really chuffed for you, and that you're really enjoying it as well, because, you know, like I said earlier on, I don't know if you joined then, but it can take 3+ months for the brain chemistry to even find an equilibrium. So 4.5 months in, I'd be hoping and probably expecting that's, you know, that's starting to really take effect, that jumble of neurotransmitters and, you know, serotonin and dopamine and all that stuff that the brain makes for itself. It's finding its own balance now, and that's great, Karen, as well. You're a non-drinker. Yeah, that's it. Done. Off switch. Party's over. Been there, done that. Don't need to do it again. I certainly wouldn't be like trying to find out where raves were taking place in fields anymore. You know, we grow up, we move on. Things that were fun or part of our life no longer are. And for some people, that alcohol is that thing. It's just something they've done and they're finished with. And that's a nice attitude to have. And you can look forward then. I'm well aware that now that we're coming up to the end, it's been wonderful to chat, well, at you, rambling on. I always surprise myself that I can ramble on, relentlessly for an hour, but done it again. I think that this will be edited by Claire or Laura or UC or one of the other lovely people at Club Soda, so it will be more succinct than I am, but they'll put the links up and whatnot, I'm sure. And I've come back on Facebook today because I deactivated my account for 2017 as another part of my be more productive and procrastinate less drive. So I deactivated my Facebook account, but I'm still on Messenger. So if anyone wants to private message me any questions on the Messenger app on Facebook, by all means do. Or as usual, I think there's an email me link on the Club Soda website somewhere, or UC or Laura can also pass on an email if you've got any personal questions you didn't want to share here. Thanks, Kath, and appreciate everyone being on here live with me, and have a good Sunday evening. And I'm going to enjoy the rest of my monogrammed Belvoir cordial before I watch yesterday's Taboo with the lovely Tom Hardy. And well done to everyone for all of the changes you've made and you're contemplating. And Deneen, yes, I will. I haven't got a link to the quote because it's in a really old book, but I will type the quote and the book it's from and give it to Laura. Take care, everybody. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Beverly.